working with color once again in InDesign, but this time let's apply the color. So we're going to be using the color panel and the swatches panel. So to locate those, if you don't see them in your panel dock on the right side of your interface, go under Window and look for color. They actually are inside of that. So color, here's your color panel, and here is your swatches panel. So when we deal with the color panel, we can put in our mixture of colors, and we can use this in a number of different ways. Cmyk is probably going to be the one you use most often. This is where we type in a value from 0 to 100% of our cyan, magenta, yellow, and key color, which is typically black. This is our process color. And the lighter we get, the lesser the percentages, with the exception of, and then we have black at the bottom. So one thing that you can do in this as you're mixing is actually, if you get sort of your color but you'd like to go lighter, you'd like to slide all of the sliders together, hold down your shift key first and then click, and you'll be able to basically create a tint of your color, because it's a percentage equally getting less. So that's a nice handy shortcut. Shift first and then click on your slider and drag. RGB, of course, stands for red, green, and blue. This is the additive color model. You would use this one if you were choosing to keep your files digital. If you're choosing to print, you would not use this color model. Red, green, and blue. And the third option here is lab color, and lab stands for the luminance or the lightness, and then chromatic components. And those chromatic components can be from -128 to 127. Now you notice with all of these different methods, you may get a warning box, and these are out of gamuts. So this means that this color is hard to print at the moment. If you want to solve it, you click on the little icon, and it will adjust the slider slightly to then make it in gamut or able to print. We also have our color picker. I'm going to go back to Cmyk. Our color picker, double click on the fill or the stroke, you'll open up your color picker. Now I do want to note there's so much repetition in this program. We see our fill and stroke over here in tools, we see it up here in our control panel, we see it over here in the color panel, and we see it in the swatches panel. So there is a lot of repetition, and again, you'll find the one right way that you feel comfortable working with color. So when I double click either the fill icon or the stroke icon in one of these places, I will open up the color picker. And this is where I can define a swatch. I get basically my range, the spectrum that I can look at. Now I'm in RGB. If I want to, I can switch that. And you can add a Cmyk Swatch, which is right here, and it adds the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, even though I was working in an RGB color space. Okay, so basically you can just click and drag in here and then add it. Or if you click OK, it's an unnamed or undefined color because it doesn't save it in your swatches. Remember, we want to save all of our colors in our swatches. All right, so how do we apply now? So how do we apply this to our graphics? Let's just create some simple shapes here. We'll create a series of squares. I'm holding Shift to make it be constrained. I'm going to go up to my selection tool, and I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt to make a copy, but Shift to constrain it so they're in a straight line. Okay, and I use my smart guides, actually will tell me that they're equally spaced. There's a lot of great tools in InDesign that just happen for you. So to apply a color to either the fill or the stroke, I need to select the object, and of course when I select the object, then my color and fill will change to whatever attributes that color or that object has. And so I can then either use any of these methods. I can use my color here, I can use swatches here. Let's get into Cmyk color. So I had to move my sliders to Cmyk, and I can navigate to build whatever color I want. Okay, and again, I should save this in swatches whenever I'm creating a color. So with it selected, now if I wanted to apply a stroke, I would simply click to bring the stroke forward, and you'll see that happens. Now I can also go straight up here and just apply if that's easier, and increase my stroke weight if I'd like to. All right, so with it selected, I can use any of these methods. If my stroke is in front, you know, I just click my colors. Okay. So that is the method to do, the easier method, I guess, to apply a stroke or a fill. Now you can just drag and drop a color directly from the swatches onto an object. So if I click this red and drag it onto this box, it will change. I do not need to have them selected, okay, for this to happen. Now it's doing the fill, which is what it will do, okay? So anyway, that's the way that you can drag and drop a color directly on. Now in my tools over here, I do have some ways to flip things around. For instance, I have the swap icon, which swaps the fill and the stroke, similar to what maybe you've seen in Photoshop or even Illustrator. And then I have the defaults. This will take me back to a default, and in InDesign the default is a fill of none with a stroke of black. And I can press X to toggle to do a swap, and then click the little icon here, or press D to default to fill and stroke. Now one thing to note, I do also have a swatch here that's called paper, and people wonder, well, what is paper? Paper basically is a fill of white. So if I have a fill of none, let's just drag this one over top, and I'll bring this to the top of the stack. So you can see that I have a fill of none, which makes it able to see through that box. Now if I put a paper fill, let me bring fill to the front, put a paper, oops, make it be selected, paper. What it's going to do is it appears to be white. Now we don't have white ink. So if I'm printing on white paper, what will happen is the red and the blue will be cut out to allow my paper color to come through, thus the word paper for my swatch. Now if I had a pink paper, it's not going to be white, right? We can't print white. We don't have white in our CMYK library of colors. So it's the paper color. So if you think of it that way, it's not a fill of none, it's a paper color is going to be. So nothing will be printed in that area. Now another note I wanted to mention about using text. So if I type in here some text, oh, we're on the wrong tool here. Let's go and create our box and type some text that I can get to be a little bit larger here. Let's make it be Arial, and let's go even higher. Let's do 100 point here, and it of course offsets. My box is not big enough. Let's just bring it a little bit larger. Okay. I don't need to do any fancy editing at this point because I just want to show you something. Now in all of our little areas here, we have icons, okay? So number one, I can apply color to type or to text with my type tool, selecting it. So I select my text, and then I use fit my color or my swatches, but notice that my fill now has a T in it. And there's also a T with the stroke. So this indicates that it's going to be applied to that type. The text will be filled or the text will be stroked. You can actually stroke, I'll stroke it, your text. Okay, so if I deselect here, you can see it's got a magenta fill with a black stroke. Okay, so what I wanted to point out with this is that we have this formatting options here that either it's going to affect our container or it's going to affect the text. So if I select this again, and let's just pay attention to this, let's see if we can't center this a little bit to make it visually look a little better. So if I do my first formatting option here, formatting affects the container, and have that selected, basically I'm able to put a fill and a stroke on my container. Sorry for the crazy colors here, but you can get the idea. Let's just put a black on there. And I'll increase that stroke so you can see it. There you go. So my container has a yellow fill black stroke. Now if I choose the text, so my formatting affects the text button, all of them change. Look at all of the locations change. And now I'm able to change the color of my text. I just changed the stroke. Let's make the fill be in front. There you go. So you're able to play around with both your container and your text. What if I have a saved swatch? Now I want to modify it. I want to modify the swatch. Let's just say, I'll deselect this. We'll go off of, let's go to Cmyk here, and we'll select a color. Let's take off the black. We'll do some kind of an interesting, oops, let's do the fill here. Okay, so say this purple color, that's it. That's the one I want. So I'm going to click it and drag it into my swatches. Now, what if I need to update that? I want to modify it. So simple as just double clicking the swatch. When you double click the swatch, I could name it at this point also by unchecking that box, and I can change my color a bit. So I could make it be lighter. I could do whatever I wanted. Click OK. Now notice that when I updated that, every object or frame that uses that color as a fill or a stroke will automatically be updated. So that's very, very handy, very nice. What if I want to delete that now? I don't want that swatch there, or I want to clean house and just delete some swatches I'm not using. So again, a few methods. I can select the swatch, go to my menu and choose to delete it. I can delete the swatch, and it's going to give me a warning here. Either way I do this, because this is defined. So that means it's saved here, it's defined, and it's applied to objects. So it's going to open asking me, do I want to replace this color with another? So I'm going to replace the color of the objects with another color. I can choose that if I'd like, or I can make it be an unnamed swatch. And an unnamed swatch basically deletes it from my swatches panel, but still keeps that fill applied to my objects. Okay, so this kind of, I'm going to cancel this because there's another way I can delete it by clicking my little trash can there. Same thing. Or dragging it to the trash. Same thing. So it's going to ask you if you've applied this color to something in your document, do you want to just make it unnamed? It's going to delete it from swatches, but keep the fill. Or do you want to replace it with something else? Okay, so let's just say I choose to replace it. Click OK, it's gone, and now those objects that had it applied, had that previous color applied, are now changed. The color has been changed. So there are some ways that we can apply color